Hello again. Yeah, now that I'm more in a formal setting, thank you also everyone who made it possible for us or to me to be present in this special evening or event. So yeah, I'll be talking mostly about cooperative housing projects that we are working on now. First of all, before introducing myself or the work that we do, introducing my office, we are a non-profit workers cooperative. Nowadays, we are 11 members that were the founding members. In total, we are more or less 20 people, including trainees, architects, civil engineers, people from accounting that help us. And it was funny when we got the invitation to come here with this topic of infrastructures, because 2 or 3 years ago, we stopped for a moment and after some years of working to reflect on what's the work that we do, and we ended up with this definition of that we work to generate community infrastructures for the sustainability of life as a key tool for the eco-social transition through architecture, cooperativism, and participation. And I like very much this definition because every time that I will go to this type of forums and there's a lot of discussion on what's architecture, no? And you look at the definitions of architecture from the masters that we studied in school, no? There's a lot of emphasis to light and to form, and obviously we don't reject those things, but we think that there's way more, no? And that's why we were feeling more comfortable in this idea of infrastructure, especially when we can put this layer of community managed infrastructure, no? And that we can add the layers of sustainability and so on. So as Andrew mentioned, maybe some of you know us for this project, La Borda, which was the first housing cooperative project that we did. It was completed 5 years ago now, and I happen to live there also, so sometimes I speak more as a user than as an architect. I was not actually involved in the design team of this project, so I can complain more than some of my colleagues. But no, indeed, we are very happy to be there. But as I mentioned briefly in the discussion, sometimes we just share these images, and that's what arrives to people, but they don't see all the thing that is behind that, no? And I think there's a lot of these projects that can be translated into other projects, and many other things that can lead into failure, or even that we might be disappointed if they are just taken one piece of a time, no? So there's a lot of people who approach us and come to visit the building because they are interested in the sustainability aspect, but then I explain them all the land management, or some people who come to us for the co-housing aspect, but then I explain them the sustainability aspect. No? We think it's a full package, and it's this holistic approach that we need to solve this housing and climate crisis that we are facing, because they are interconnected. No? So in this case, it was a project, as the other projects I will show you, that arise from a community that was organized, in this case, around the reclaiming of a former factory in the neighborhood of Sants in Barcelona, and that started organizing and grow until they got the land, they got the permits, they got the finance. They managed to change even, or we managed to change even certain regulations. No? So there was a lot of economic, legal, social endeavors, not only the architectural, which is normally the most visible. The project that I'll be showing you, we make it in this model, or we call it this model, we have to call it kind of grant of use, cooperative housing. I guess that most parts of the world you can just say cooperative housing and that's it. We did have cooperative housing in Spain, but we are also a society, since the dictatorship, very much focused on owner-occupied houses. Like 80% of the houses in Spain are owner-occupied. So even the cooperatives, they were meant to be cooperative developments, and then when the building was finished, the units were subdivided and then given to the tenants as a ownership model. No? So now most of them, they belong to the free market. Here, what the innovation was looking at existing models like Swiss or Danish or Uruguay in Latin America, was this idea that the cooperative remains and it's always the entire owner of the building. There's not even subdivision of the entities. There's a real group that rules the functioning of the cooperative and takes all the decisions, and especially if it's there from the very beginning, which is normally the case. And then the people have the right of use this unit. No? So we take from all the rights that you have when you own a flat, we take the one that, it's the only one that people should care, which is using their housing. No? We don't need to link our need and our right to use a house and to have a decent housing to the financialization, to the mortgages, to the inflation of prices. So people who live in these projects, they have the right to live there all their life. In most of the cases, you cannot inherit this right to live there. And in all cases, you cannot resell, sublet. If you don't need the house, it goes back to the cooperative, and the cooperative decides who moves in. No? And this way, we manage to keep prices. The prices don't grow. But we have stability, no? Which is something. In Spain, the rental market is 5-7 years contract, and after that, the owner, they can raise whatever they want the price, which I feel is already quite unstable. This week here, I hear that you're worse, so I don't feel better, I feel sorry for you. But that's an alternative. I think it's also interesting when I come in venues like this one to talk about this, which maybe you might think, well, we can invite somebody from Switzerland to explain it because they have been doing that for 100 years. But then for people or contexts like ours, it can be very overwhelming, no? Because even in Barcelona, all the time we look at Vienna, which has been for 100 years doing very good policies of housing. So it's like, okay, do we need to wait 100 years to get there, to do things, no? And here, we started with this project of La Borda as an experimental project for the first time being built this type of housing in public land. And since then, this is numbers only for Catalonia, for the region of Catalonia. We have expanded quite rapidly. No? So we have already some hundreds of units of people living in this type of projects, and way more, almost 1,000 units on the pipeline in very few years. Most of our work is based in Barcelona. There's 19 of these projects. 16 of them are in public land, and 3 of them are in private land. When you look at the rest of the region, because of the price of the land that I was mentioning before, it's the other way around. We have way more projects in private land than in public land, although we have some few. And the ones that you see in orange is the ones that my office did or is doing. We have 2 completed, La Borda and La Balma in Barcelona. 2 more that in a few months we will finish the construction. La Morada, which is, in this case, only female and queer project. And then the one in Manresa, which is outside of Barcelona, that is also going to be completed in a few months. And 6 more that we are now working on the projects. But those are all projects that they already have the land and or the building to live there. The different dots are also the different ways that the land was provided, not only even within the public ownership of land. There was different ways of providing the land, but in all cases it's like a leasehold for 90 years, where the cooperative can use the land as long as it's for providing social housing, and the government controls that this is actually the case, no? That the people move in fulfills the social housing criteria. Today, I won't have time to talk about the economic and legal more details, but you can come and find me after the break if you want to know more. I'll be focusing more on those three topics that for us are the most, probably some of the most interesting reasons why we are so passionate about this model, no? And the first is this thing that I was also starting to mention before, no? The user participation, the fact that we have a community that is there beforehand and that we can engage, we can co-design, we can take decisions together with them, that they control fully the process, not only the architectural, but in all senses. But that we can also have conversations and even explain them alternatives, no? So we don't believe in a sort of participation which is just asking the people what they think and then build it. Every time we start a new project, we bring these people to see alternative solutions. We bring them other ways of building, other ways of organizing the houses, and then we let them decide because it's going to be their house. But first, we inform them and we explain them pros and cons of every different solution, because if we just believe in participation as it is, not just asking people what they think, we also have a lot of we can repeat a lot of problems that brought us to the current situation. No, we can repeat all the bad decisions that we've taken and that are embedded in our culture, in ourselves. We like to take this engagement as long as we can, so even in self-construction. So in the case of Laborda, there was not bad proportion of self-construction and still going on with many of the collective spaces still being finished. But it's not always the case. It depends on how prepared and how skilled are the different groups and how they want to do so. No? But another interesting aspect of bringing the community in the very early stages is that we can also see how they are, how they live, who they are, and it brings us also, again, very alternative narratives on the mainstreams. No? For instance, when we looked at the community in Laborda, it's 28 units. Only one of them was the conventional family, mother, father, and 2 children. One of 28. No? And that's still what we are repeated all over again to be like kind of the mainstream by the market, by the imaginary. No? Even the houses that we produce, at least in Spain, they still have 2, 3 bedrooms because that's what sells more expensive. But when we look at the statistics, more than 50% of the households in Spain, they are composed by 1 or 2 people, and this is going to be almost 60 in a few years. So why we still produce this huge housing? This takes us to the second point, which is the redefinition of collective housing program. No? Like, we don't have to think that collective housing is just a collection of individual units of housing, one on top of each other. No? So what we do with these groups is we start to reflect with them on what is in housing and related to housing. No? And many of these things, I think now, after the lockdown during the COVID, became more apparent. For instance, the work from home or leisure, no? Like all the activities that we actually do and have always been performed at the house, no? And many others that are related to the house, very connected, like mobility, energy, economy, care of each other, the community. No, all these aspects we discuss with these groups. Where do they want to resolve? Where do they want to take care of these things? No, is it have to be resolved at the individual level? Maybe it has to be in the household. Maybe some households can share, or maybe it can be shared with the entire community, or maybe we don't even need it at home, because in the building, because it's already present in the neighborhood, there's a surplus of that, and we don't need to repeat something that is already there. So with that, we transferred from this model, more conventional model of collective housing, where you fulfill all your needs in the individual units, and then the communal common spaces are just the stairs, the elevators, the machines, and that's it, because that's not bringing value to the house. What we do is we reduce the units, and we put these square meters that we save into communal spaces. No? So what we've seen in average in the projects in Barcelona is that we are around 10, 11% of the surface of the building dedicated to community spaces, no? Community spaces that are really used, that are not just for circulation or machinery. So why do we do that? No? The first, more obvious reason, it's for saving. I don't know how it is here, but in Spain, the culture, it's really one of the first things that breaks the mind of many, blows the mind of many people that come visit these projects, that we don't have a washing machine at home, and we share that, no? And still the law requires you to have the space for the washing machine, the plumbing for the washing machine. In some regions in Spain, even they force you to have a separate room where to put the washing machine. Even if you say, no, I don't want a washing machine, I'm gonna have it in a laundry, or there's a laundry, public laundry just in front of my house, I don't need it. Why do I need a space for a machine that I use 1-2 hours a week, no? And the rest of the week is taking space, is taking energy. It breaks every 5 years, and I need to invest into a new one. No? So, very basic thing. But even to the people from the first project from La Borda, were a little bit hesitant until now. I don't think there's anyone that would go backwards to have a washing machine at home, no? And this goes also, no, by the hanging of the laundry. But this is also important to mention that all these community spaces are not just leisure spaces, no? Because obviously we had community spaces in collective housing, no? Especially in more affluent neighborhoods where you might have a tennis court, a swimming pool, all activities related to leisure. But we have a lot of community spaces related to care, no? To activities that historically have been given the worst attention, the worst space in our homes, no? Like trying to, even when you look at very important historical models like the Frankfurt kitchen, no? Trying to maximize the surface and make the minimum movements, but then this means that we are giving these spaces only the surface that one person does the function, when only doing one thing at a time. And when you see a numbers, still most of the case is a woman. Here, what we are doing is all these activities, we are giving them the best place, with a lot of natural light, with a lot of visual connections to the rest of the building, so everybody can see who's doing the task, that you can do multiple things at the same time, so these photos are not staged. Like this is something that I do with my daughter. We go, we do the laundry, we play a little bit there, because it's a fast laundry. We wait there, and then we go hanging it there, and there's some swings, so you can do more than one activity at the same time. This is for La Palma, the second project we completed, which is following the same principles. And again, in La Palma, in many cases, in these projects, there's a big kitchen and a big dining room, living room, although, again, the law still requires us to have a functioning kitchen in our individual units, even if you don't want it. So for the moment, we still have kitchens in every unit, but in many cases, they are very small, no? And even the living rooms, they're very small. So in my place, I cannot host more than 8 people for a dinner. But that's fine, because that happens once every 3-4 months. And in exchange, I have these big spaces where I can host the Living Cities Forum next year if you want in my multifunctional room, because this happens once a year, no? And I don't need this space, and I don't need to heat and to take care of this space all the quarter, all the year when I'm not using it. This is again La Borda. At the end of these metal stairs, we have a couple of guest rooms, which happen to be the most used space in the community, because they are almost always fully booked by friends and family visiting, and became also a very successful piece of the infrastructure. And this is, again, in La Palma. So some of the learnings that we did in this, from the first project, was that these communal spaces in La Borda, they are maybe too domestic. So actually, even there's not many occasions that we are using most of these beautiful and big spaces, but they're very hard to share with the outside community, because if we let this to host the next Living Cities Forum, maybe somebody will put the laundry and then we cannot hear each other, or they will go in their pajamas and it will be a little bit awkward. So what we've done in the next projects is to find ways also to make that these spaces are easier to share with the outside community, and they don't become gated communities. That this is one risk that these type of projects face, to become very much inwards. So in the case of La Palma, just adding one extra door and placing better this communal space that you saw before, they are able to let this space to the associations in the neighborhood that meet there every now and then. In the case of La Borda, though, what we did is the retail space, and this happens in many of these projects, was rented to a food co-op that was very present in the neighborhood, and they have like a discount price, but because it's like a symbiotic relation, like most of the people or all the people in the community are members of this food co-op. They do most of their purchase there, and we are very, it's very handy. And in the same way, in return, they get a lot of clients or a lot of members that are very permanent there. And this idea of rethinking the collective housing also goes beyond, not only in the communal spaces, but also goes inside of the individual units. So we think also that we need to redefine our relation to our units. And I always think in my parents' house, which is the same when I lived there with my brother, that now they're living alone. And this doesn't make much sense to me, why our houses are not able to adapt to our changing lives. So in this model, we have different ways to cope with that. The first one is management, which is when there's an empty apartment, the first that have the priority to move in is the same people living in the community. So if you're living in a small apartment, you had a child, and there's a free or a bigger apartment, you can move there, and then it's a smaller apartment that is open to the outside community. This has already happened only in 5 years in La Borda. There's been already moves of this kind. And the second one is more related to design. So here we have 3 different sizes of units. The smallest is 40 square meters. The medium is 60 square meters, and the biggest, there's around 75 square meters. But they all come from the same base, from the smaller. And in between these smaller units, we have these 2 rooms that can be or not attached to one unit or the other. So we can have 1 big apartment and 1 small apartment, or 2 medium apartments on a L shape. And what is important also is that, as you see in this floor plan, you cannot tell, okay, this is the master bedroom with the en-suite lavabo, suite bathroom. Like, we are trying to work as much as we can into a less hierarchical plans and a layout to adapt to the different lifestyles and household compositions. So to do so, we have not only the structure, the physical aspect, which is prepared. So what we have is these openings in the bearing walls that now some of them are closed with dry walls. And if this room has to change from one unit to the other, we can just transfer the drywall and change it. So in this case, for instance, we have this medium apartment that has this opening, but if it would be a bigger apartment, there will be another opening where the people is standing. So this physical aspect can change, but also even the legal contract can change. Now we are in social housing, which means that our contracts are registered in the government, which means that you have a lot of bureaucracy every time that you have to sign a new contract. So in order to avoid all this process, we separated, like all of us have the contract for the basic unit, and all the rooms have separated contracts that can be added to the main contract. This way, in a week, we can do all the physical, economic, legal arrangements that we need to transfer one room to another unit. And also, in this case, that depends in each project. In the case of La Borda, we allowed people to choose where to put the kitchen around the bathroom. So because of all these different, the three typologies, the open floor, the non-hierarchical, the customization of the kitchen, we have 28 units that all come from the same matrix, and they are all completely different. Everybody adapted to their own needs, and actually it's quite evolving. So just some examples of the interiors of the units and how people adapted differently to their needs and tastes. These are the ones facing north, which are the only 4 of 28. And finally, what we are doing now with the newest projects we are now working on the project is also challenging even the idea of the individual units. So this was something that was not allowed in Catalonia until a year and a half that they passed a new regulation that allowed us to make smaller units and to take into account the communal spaces as part of the units. So even in the previous projects, like in La Borda, all the communal spaces, they didn't qualify as social housing. So for instance, when we were asking for grants for social housing, we could not count all the communal spaces. So even if for us, they are part of the house. So here there was a change in the regulation that allowed us for these new types of living that they are more present in Northern, Central Europe, Germany, Switzerland, like the clusters or the shared apartments where people do live even way more in a communal way, like in a very, like a smaller clusters of households, like 5, 6, 7, or even up to 10 units that are smaller, that might have or not a kitchenette, and that they do share this space. And it's important also to stress that this is something that it's always volunteer, that people don't end up there because this is the cheapest option, but because it's people, especially we have a lot of elderly people who want to live closer to others, people who decided not to have children, and they want to live in a more communal way. And the last bit, and maybe it's the most obvious, some of the things, but is the sustainability aspect. So obviously we try to do all these designs following as much bioclimatic and having a deep insight of the impact that our buildings have during the construction and during their performance. That's the southern facade of La Borda. Normally, if you come in summer, you would see what's on the left, and if you come on winter, you would see what's on the right. And we also look after each other. Like, for instance, after seeing that, I think that probably somebody would have gone to the neighbor in the 5th floor and say, "Hey, why didn't you put down the blinds?" Because it's summer. But yeah, just with very basic bioclimatic tricks and designs and traditional mechanisms like the wooden blinds that are very common in the Mediterranean coast. And with the width from the balconies, we play to live out or in the sun. This is the same building, but this is the north facade. We only have half an hour of direct sun at maximum here. So here we placed as less space as possible. There's only 4 units. And actually, these units, they pay less for the heating water consumption. We have central heating, and we decided to balance because we knew that they might need heating, while most of the other units, they don't even use the heating in winter. This is the case of La Palma. Here we played also a lot with these open corridors and these blinds, but we had to adapt to the surroundings. So we have quite a noisy street, and then a very close high school in the other side. So as you might notice, the section changes. No? So we have the first 3 floors, the corridor is on one side, and in the other 2 floors, it's on the other side. And we play a lot with this corridor, not only as a buffer for energy, but also as this is the balconies of these spaces, no? And they became really kind of the most iconic part of the building. And with this, like three-hole and these different layers of how do you go from the very public to the more intimate spaces, no? And sometimes when I show this project, people make me a lot of questions about intimacy, no? And also in the case of La Borda, where we also have these corridors where a lot of bedrooms or living rooms face, no? And people are concerned about that. Well, we always had, at least in the Mediterranean, we always had houses in the ground floor, very connected, very open, especially when the units were very small, very open to the street. And there's also a very interesting piece of technology called curtain that you can close when you want intimacy, and then when you don't need it, you open. So far, nobody complained about a lack of intimacy in these projects, no? And the other way around, like in La Palma was not possible because of the shape of the plot that was very thin. But in La Borda, we worked with this patio that actually came from the first workshops we organized with the community, and we asked them to bring us what they envisioned in the imaginary for housing, and they brought us a lot of images of patios. And this actually comes from southern central part of Spain, a typology called Corrala, where there was a lot of very poor housing around a central patio. And this is actually, it's some sort of design that not only works for climate, because this patio, this courtyard is covered with a greenhouse that helps us control the climate in the different seasons, but also enhances the chances that you have to meet others. No, it's not the classical conventional collective housing where you go into the corridor, stairs, and then to your house. And when you're exiting your house, if you hear that your neighbor is also leaving, you stay 30 seconds not to cross him. Here is the other way around, no? And we try to encourage the people meet. Then you don't have to be friends with your neighbor. You can still don't like your neighbor, but at least architecture is going to help you, no? And here, something that is very common that happens, no? For instance, is that you have some kid playing in this multifunctional space, and then the other kids hear it, and they go down, and they are the ones that took more advantage of the building. And the last bit for this and for the sustainability, is that we don't rely neither in a lot of high tech. No, we think that a lot of relying too much in high tech, it's very expensive. It's very depending on the technology, and we also need to resolve many things before. No, so most of the time what we work is with empowering the communities and make them understand how to use their own houses so that they don't end up installing AC in a building that doesn't need it because it's designed in a way that doesn't need it. No? So, but if you don't know how to use it, you might end up installing AC. So here's one of my colleagues doing this more pedagogic explanation on how to use it. And because we've been monitoring the project, now we managed to prove that we stayed in the comfort zone, saving half of the energy like an average house in the neighborhood, no? And which means also half of the energy price, and this was even before the rise of energy prices. So it also relates to energy poverty. And the very first thing that we do when we start these projects is also looking at how we can reduce the demand. So we reduce the demand of energy consumption, no, with these more passive strategies, but we can reduce the demand not building certain things, no, like with this efficiency I was telling you before with the washing machines. But for instance, one thing that we noticed was that the majority of the community didn't have a car. And actually, this is something that relates into social housing. Like, half of the households in Barcelona don't have a car. And when you look at the social housing numbers, it's even more. So, but still, we had this regulation that forced us, no, like some minimum parking requirements that forced us to dig underground, and that all these economy and sustainability measures that we were trying to implement, they were into rubbish, because having to dig underground for some machines that the same municipality is saying that it's trying to take out from the city. So we worked a couple of years together with the other housing cooperatives and some political parties, and we managed to change this regulation, and La Borda was the first building not to be forced to build underground parking, but now it's a regulation for every new building in Barcelona. And yeah, finally, with the choice of materials as well, no, like the construction impact. La Borda, when it was finished, we built it with CLT panels, with timber made of pine from the north of Spain. And when it was finished, it was the tallest building made of wood in Spain. You can see it's a skyscraper, similar to the ones that you have here in the center. No, it's only 6 stories, but it was the tallest. Now has been surpassed by another housing cooperative in Barcelona. So it's just to prove that these projects that run in consensus, that are very budget limited, they are not against innovation. No, actually they are the ones that are being more looking forward and more advanced, because they can also take into account the long term and other impacts that other developers they leave from the equation. No? So that was it. Thank you very much.